Hi everyone, my name is Stephanie Brozo and I'm the hiring manager here at the Animal Emergency and Referral Center of Minnesota. I have been a team member here at AERC for almost 12 years and I have also been involved with management and hiring for many years as well. Today we are going to be discussing all things to do with applications, resumes, interview processes, making decisions, and also learning how to support your candidates so that they can succeed in the role that they're most interested in. So let's get started. Although today's topic is how to lose a hire in 10 days, I hope what you will take away today is how not to lose a hire in 10 days. Being part of such a large company such as AERC, we have multiple roles to fill multiple times throughout the year. We pretty much always have a revolving door of open positions just based off of the size and constantly adding new positions or seeing internal movements within our own company. So we do hire quite a lot of people throughout the year, which makes this process necessary for us to perfect and be efficient. 10 days to you might not seem that long, or it might seem like that goal is much longer than what you would like. Just please take a note that this is going to be a recommendation based off of what works for us here at AERC, and to take this information with a grain of salt and how to mold it into what your practice will need. If 10 days seems too long for you, maybe cut it in half and say that you want to provide from application to an offer or rejection to be 5 days. Whatever you think would be best for your hospital is just what we want you to take away from this talk today. So from start to finish, the process of our hiring usually starts with opening up a position. And when we do that, we want to make sure that our job descriptions are up to date with the correct information, qualifications, and what we're expecting out of this team member to portray. We also want to make sure that we have a schedule readily available, and so that if the candidate has questions about schedule or hours or rotations, that we can provide that information to them right away. I also make sure that I have a benefits information or a flyer for candidates so that they can review our benefits. And I'm also very honest and upfront regarding our compensation and base hourly wages, just because it is kind of a taboo subject where a lot of people are uncomfortable asking about hourly wages. And for me as a manager to be the one to initiate that discussion really opens that door of communication, and it does join a little bit of trust with that candidate to bridge over that communication gap that sometimes is missing through hiring processes. So once a position is officially open and available, I post it, and then I gather the candidates where I review their information and make sure that they're going to be a good fit for their role. From there, we schedule an interview where we do a phone interview and then an in-person interview and a shadow. And then we're ready to make a final decision. We can discuss references and background checks at the end of this presentation. Ensuring that your job description for the role that you're hiring for is updated is important to be sure that you're giving the candidate the most recent information about your expectations that you want out of this role and what your ideal candidate looks like. The scheduling and hours information is also vitally important because you want to make sure that your candidate has the capacity to work the shifts that you are hiring for. And as I mentioned previously, compensation and benefits is something that you should discuss early on in the interview process to bridge that communication gap. That way, if you are not able to meet the candidate's financial wishes or desires or requirements, then you don't waste your time specifically interviewing and shadowing this candidate where it won't even matter how much you negotiate if you can't reach what they're requesting. And a lot of the times, supplying candidates with benefits information can also help a candidate sway from deciding whether or not they are willing to accept a lower financial wage from what they were expecting if the benefits kind of bridge that gap in reference to the added bonus of whatever your company can provide, whether it is stipends, bonuses, or other means of compensation that does not typically tie to a base hourly wage. Your job descriptions should be written relatively in the same manner for every role and position that you have available in your clinic. The items that make up a job description typically are going to be education, experience, and certifications, the physical requirements of the job, your expectations of every team member at your company, and then the skill set specific for that job description. So the education, experience, certifications, and credentials are going to be as specific as you want. You can request CSRs or your receptionist to have 2 years of CSR experience, or you can say that your technicians need at least 1 year of clinical experience to be qualified, etc. I like to use the caveat of placing other strong candidates may be considered for this role. Just as an extra side bonus if you interview a candidate that you love and you want to make a consideration for them in a different role. The physical requirements are going to be the same across the board regardless of what role you're hiring for throughout your company, because ideally it's going to be the same stuff. As far as working in an animal hospital, you're going to incur risk of injury from animals. You're going to be exposed to elements such as anesthetic gases, radiation, and other miscellaneous hazardous waste items, that sort of a thing. Everybody's going to do their fair share of lifting or sitting or squatting, so just informing candidates that this is something that you're expected to do is important. Your expectations are going to be what the company is expecting out of your team members for team collaboration. So as far as arriving to work, on time, punctuality is important, participation in team meetings, or if you require continuing education courses every year, that's important for them to see that these are your expectations of them. Your uniform expectations and any compliance with SOPs or AHA certifications and credentials, making sure that they stay up to date with those items so that they can practice according to your standards. And then, of course, your skill set is going to be what is going to be most likely changed from description to description. And it's going to be the synopsis of the role and primary responsibilities. So including what you want to have them focus on as far as patient care, client care, any diagnostics or surgery, anesthesia skills. These are going to be items that are going to be more job specific, and it's going to vary mostly based upon what role you're hiring for. Figuring out the schedule and hours for this position before it goes live will help you with the process of ensuring that your candidates are going to fit what you need and what your hospital needs. So determining whether or not this is a full-time or part-time position, and specifically, what does that mean for your hospital? For example, full-time at AERC is considered 30 hours a week. So a lot of our overnight technicians will work 3 10-hour shifts, whereas our emergency critical care staff during days and evenings will work 4 8-hour shifts. And then our specialty and referrals department are typically scheduled for 10-hour shifts. So they do vary depending on the role and responsibilities and department. Part-time is dependent on working 1 shift per week up to 3 shifts per week if they don't go over 30 hours. Having those boundaries in place and letting candidates know those expectations is important. A lot of our candidates are a little confused by the aspect that full-time is considered 30 hours here, and they worry about not making enough money financially or being able to pick up extra hours if they want a full 40-hour work week. So being prepared for what their schedule is going to be and how many hours a week you're going to be scheduling them, and giving that information right away in the beginning of this process is going to be essential for communication. Being that we are a 24/7 hospital, we also like to mention that we are going to have them be available to work nights, weekends, and holidays on occasion. If your practice is open on Saturdays, I would include this information. If you're hiring for a kennel attendant that's going to be required to come in after hours on Saturdays and Sundays to tend to your boarders, I would also put that as part of your expectations for this role as well. And also going over your schedule so that if you have a shift that you are going to work Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday every week and it never changes, that's good to know. Or if you're going to be rotating where you work some Saturdays and then off Wednesdays, or something where you will be performing the schedules every 2 weeks because you never know who's going to be on vacation and whatnot. So it just depends on what your personal style is for ensuring that your clinic is adequately staffed and how you schedule them. That is going to be important for the candidate to know, because every practice does this differently, and being able to explain it at the beginning of their interview process will help them decide whether or not that's something that they are looking for as well, that will work with what they want. So as discussed before, compensation and benefits is usually a very hot topic for candidates. They want to know hourly wage, and a lot of the times candidates are interested in knowing about the medical, dental, life insurance, or disability insurance being offered, either at a discounted rate or even provided at all through your hospital. Also, expediting and highlighting if you have a 401k or retirement plan option available is good for candidates to know right off the bat. And then any additional company-sponsored benefits, like if you have a uniform stipend or allowance, if you offer a pet stipend or special discounts through your own programs, and especially if you have in general practice, I know that some clinics get discounted or free flea and tick and heartworm preventative. These are all amazing things that you can highlight so that when candidates are looking through their benefits, they can take that into consideration before you actually make a final decision regarding their base hourly wage. You can use these extra benefits to explain to candidates why you are able to provide the wage that you are offering, but still be able to offer benefits that will help support them in their role in the veterinary hospital. I also like to take time to document some frequently asked questions that I get on almost a daily basis, and I send this to candidates to review within like the first conversation or so that I have with them, so that they're aware of things such as our holiday requirements, what full-time versus part-time employment looks like, what their schedule and rotations are, the general guidelines. For example, we publish our schedules 1 year into the future, but we lock in their schedule at 8 weeks. So anything beyond 8 weeks, we can make adjustments to their schedule as needed to fill shifts or manipulate their primary roles for better coverage based on the needs of the hospital. We also have regulations stating that they cannot be scheduled longer than a 12-hour shift, and if they work 5 days in a row, they need to have at least a 48-hour rest period in between shifts. And we also make accommodations that state that essentially if they are working a shift, they need to have 12 hours in between a shift so that they can have adequate rest. So we're not scheduling someone until 11 o'clock at night and having them return by 7 a.m. We don't do that. So being able to outline those guidelines also will be helpful for candidates to know, especially from a 24/7 hospital standpoint. They want to make sure that they're not going to get burnt out by working all different hours at all different times of the day. I also make a note about our time off policy, as a lot of candidates have questions about how you take time off, what the PTO accrual is, and what happens if we can't find coverage for a shift, but they are unable to work. So all of those things are outlined for them to review before I discuss anything further with them. So once all of those items are reviewed and I feel comfortable with them, I will post the position externally. And the most common places where I post positions are going to be on Indeed and Glassdoor. Indeed is nice because anything that I post on Indeed will automatically be posted to Glassdoor. And if anybody applies through Glassdoor, it gets forwarded through Indeed and I get alerted that way. I feel like this is the most common engine that people use when posting for open positions. We also utilize the MVMA website, and I have heard that there has been good success rate with posting for positions on wheretextconnect.com, through LinkedIn and Facebook, or even other engines such as Monster. But I primarily just post on Indeed. And a lot of our candidates do end up applying through word of mouth as well. So a lot of the times we'll just have random people put their application through and they don't even know what our openings are. So that's always, word of mouth is always a really good way of finding coverage for open positions as well. We do have a referral program that allows a current team member, if they refer an ex-coworker or a friend to apply for a position at AERC, that they are eligible to receive a referral bonus if that candidate ends up working in a full-time capacity for longer than a year. They're eligible to receive X amount of dollars as a referral bonus. Once a position is posted, typically through the Indeed website, it takes anywhere between 3 to 5 hours for the post to go live. So I usually post it at the end of the day, and then I come back the next morning with a couple of candidates to look through. And while I'm reviewing resumes through Indeed, I will make a just quick judgment call whether or not they're going to fit the job requirements based off of the job description. So I just quickly review their educational background, their job history background, and then I kind of just make two piles and decide which candidate is going to be contacted and which ones are not. If I am going to contact an applicant, I just send them a quick little message through Indeed that says, hey, I am interested in giving you more information regarding this position. Could you please message me back with your personal email address, because I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but communicating through the Indeed platform is not fun. My emails constantly go into their spam or junk folders, or they don't receive messages at all. So my first contact is always to introduce myself and to offer to contact them through their personal email instead of through Indeed, where I will follow up with them with more information regarding the position that they're applying for. Once I contact them through their personal email, I will also provide them information about next steps. Typically, I will request them to complete an application, and also send them through a quick screening question assessment. In general, when I am reviewing resumes, as I mentioned previously, I'm making quick decisions and assessments. This part of the application process, you're making quick judgments because you don't want to spend so much time going over resumes in too much detail, because it's really just a waste of your time to do so. The major things that I want to look over are if they have a letter of intent or a cover letter. That's always a plus in my book. If they don't have one, it's not going to make it or break it for me, but I like to know why a candidate is interested in working for us. And also, I like to see whether or not they've changed the company's name in the cover letter for attention to detail, or if it's very generic where it says, I just want to work for your company because I like puppies and kitties. So that part of a letter of intent is something that is either a hit or miss for me. I don't hold them too accountable for that. The biggest thing that I look for is going to be education and credentials to see if it matches what the job description entails. Again, it doesn't have to be a perfect match. It just has to give me an idea of, have they worked towards a higher education past high school? And we do require a high school diploma or a GED, a GED if they are going to be considered for a position at AERC. So I make sure that they did graduate and that they either have an interest in veterinary medicine where they are doing their undergrad, or they have an animal science major, or that they are currently in tech school if they're applying for an assistant or a technician position. If they're applying for a front desk position, I look for specific services experience, whether it's in like hotel, hospitality, or if they are a server or some more major client service related jobs. I'll also take a peek very quickly about work history. I'm not going to really be looking for details here except for start and end dates. If they are a chronic job hopper, that is a red flag for me. Anything that is less than a year, they haven't stayed at a hospital or a company before, that kind of makes me a little worried. But I usually will still give them a benefit of the doubt, because you have to remember that not every hospital or clinic or position is right for you, and they may be trying to find their niche. And it's going to be our job to help support them and become happy in the position that we're hiring for. Once you get to know a candidate a little better through the interview process, you can make better decisions whether or not you're willing to look through or look over their job bouncing. Plus, a good candidate will explain their job bouncing or job hunting, or if there's a lapse in employment, they will be the one that will cover that information so that you don't have to ask that of them. A person that job bounces very frequently are usually very poor interviewers. So that's also an idea to consider when interviewing candidates. And the least part of a resume that I look at with a quick assessment is the skill set. And the reason for that is because people can exaggerate their resume. They can make it look better than what they actually are able to do. And so I know that that is just a normal part of resume building, and you are going to get a better idea of their skill set and their critical thinking in the interview. There are obviously going to be times when that assessment is not correct, but typically if I see a technician applying for a job that has held a technician position for at least a year, I'm going to know that they should at least know how to place a catheter, restrain properly and efficiently and safely. The basics. If the basics are there, we can train them for the more advanced skills or specific skills that we're looking for. From your initial candidate pool of people who apply for positions through Indeed, over half of them are automatically not going to be a good fit for your role. This is incredibly frustrating that we have common people that are applying for roles that are completely outside of their job description. I don't know how many times I see an automotive technician apply for an ICU technician role, or a CNA that wants to work as a technician assistant, but they have no clinical experiences beyond their CNA experience. So those type of candidates that apply for a role that is completely outside of skill set, they don't match your general expectations or your education or experience, those candidates can just get an automated template rejection letter. Basically, you can do this through Indeed so that you don't have to worry about contacting them about the position and draining out that whole process. You can just click rejection, send a nice little letter that says, thank you so much for your interest in this position. Unfortunately, your experiences do not meet the minimum criteria for this role, but we will keep your resume on file for future openings that may be a better fit for you. And if you send that rejection letter right away, then you don't have to worry about it for future reference, and you don't have to see them on your screen wondering, who is this person again? Am I contacting them? It helps you stay organized for you to just get those right off your screen and not have to worry about them right off the bat. When I decide to contact a candidate through Indeed, as I mentioned before, I like to first contact them to get their personal email address. Once I have their personal contact information, I send them a welcome email that basically says, hi, my name is Stephanie. I'm the hiring manager here at AERC. Thank you so much for expressing interest in this role and position. Just so that you are aware, we are hiring for full-time, part-time. These are your open shifts that you could choose from. Based off of your resume, there's a rough estimation of base hourly wages between X dollar and X dollar. Final wages are dependent on education, credentials, and skill set that will be determined by the end of the interview process as we get to know you. I also will give them a handout that gives them information about our benefits and also addresses the frequently asked questions that we discussed earlier. And then also I give them a little bit of information about the company, and it will spark their interest for them to learn more. I usually will say, if you want to visit our website to learn more about us, this is our website, and I'll provide a link for them. I also will actually send them directly to our website to complete our online application, which is just our formal method of collecting their contact information so that if they are hired, we have all of that information readily available. I will also ask them to perform a very simple 6 or 7 question screening questions through an online form as well that they need to perform before that I will provide them with a phone call, basically. So this is my initial contact information. I give them all of the details so that they can read through it. I will also give them a copy of an updated job description for the role for them to review. And then basically the next steps are in the candidate's hands, whether or not they're going to move forward with scheduling an interview with me or not. I have learned that even though I contact candidates through Indeed and I give them all of this information up front, about 48% of the candidates that are qualified for this role, they will not proceed in the interview process. I have learned that typically this happens because candidates are applying for multiple positions at any given point in time, or they had a bad day at their current employer and they just got clicker happy and started applying for multiple roles, and then the next day they feel better and they're not going to follow up on anything that they did. And there are also people out there that just want to see what's out there and to get the information that they receive. is enough for them to say, I'm content in my current position. I'm actually not interested in pursuing anything right now. I like using this method of giving the candidates all the information up front, even including our benefits information and about our company a little bit better and what an estimated hourly wage would be for them based off of their skill set on their resume. This is just important for them to review because if off the bat they are not interested in learning more about us, I have not given them my time during an interview for them to just A, not show up, or B, confirm that they're not actually interested, and it's a time suck when that happens. So most of the time when candidates respond and complete the application and the screening questions that I request them to do, a lot of the times they are invested in the process and they are really excited about learning more. So the screening questions that I ask candidates to complete before I schedule a phone interview with them are basically questions to ensure that I have a position with what they're looking for. Even though my posts on Indeed will state the hours that we're looking for, a lot of candidates don't actually read through all of that information. So I'm verifying whether they're looking for full-time or part-time, and I ask them to define how many hours per week they're looking for. Because again, AERC considers full-time at 30 hours. So if somebody is interested in part-time work, but they only want to work 28 hours a week, I'll mention that we have an overnight shift available or another position available that is 30 hours a week and see if they're interested in that instead. I'll also ask them if they have desired hours or shifts. This might not be relevant to you as if you are in general practice because a lot of the times you are not open past 6 or 7 o'clock at night. But if you do have like one of those later shifts or if you offer urgent care services, you're going to want to define what the hours and what they're willing to work. If you're open until 8 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays, that might be too late for some candidates. Again, I also ask them to define what shifts and hours they're looking for, and this opens the discussion to any schedule requirements that they might not fit in. So I do also ask if they have any restrictions to days or hours that they can or cannot work, so that they can say, well, every Friday I have softball, so I don't want to work Friday nights. And if the rotation that I have available works every Friday night, that rotation is likely not going to be a good fit for this candidate. Work-life balance and work-life integration is very important with success and integrations with our roles at AERC, and it should be something that's important to you as managers as well. Also, being able to work nights, weekends, and holidays on occasion is a must, especially in a 24/7 hospital. But again, if you are not requiring this out of your candidates, then don't worry about discussing that. I also ask for them to supply me with their bare minimum hourly wage requirement, and this also opens the discussion for them to tell me what they're looking for as far as an hourly wage. Most of the time, they are within what I've already shared with them through the email. And sometimes if they put that they have a higher financial requirement than what I'm willing to offer, I can bring that up to them before I schedule a phone interview and say, I noticed that your financial requirement is higher than what we can provide you at this time. Are you still interested in interviewing for this role? Is this hourly wage negotiable? Or is this a hard requirement for you? And that way you're coming across as being respectful for what they need. And again, not wasting the candidate's time or your time with going through an interview with a candidate that you're not going to meet their expectations. And I also ask them to provide any questions that they want to discuss during their interview so that they have time to process. And that way I also go into the interview prepared so that I am ensuring that I am answering everything that they require. Our interview process is broken up into 3 separate categories, such as a phone or virtual interview, an in-person interview, and then a shadow. We typically perform the phone interview first with myself, and then we also have them perform an in-person interview with our team leads and managers, and then they shadow a team member on the floor after their interview. We also perform a clinic tour at this time. I utilize some icebreaker questions during the phone interview process to get to know a candidate a little more intimately and to try to also help open dialogue and answer any questions they have. So I really focus on questions such as, why do you want to work for AERC? And what are your expectations from us as an employer? This way they're able to communicate and make sure that their core values match our core values. I also try to ask, why have you chosen to work in veterinary medicine? And I get a lot of amazing information out of this from candidates. It's always that I have a passion and love for animals, yada, yada, yada. But what I'm looking for specifically is for them to not say, I don't like to work with humans. That's a red flag for me. That's pretty much an automatic no. That's the only reason or way that I will ever not go forward with a candidate, really, honestly, after a phone interview. And then I ask them about what kind of challenges they think they might face coming to work at our emergency referral hospital. I get an idea of what type of electronic medical records that they have worked with in the past. And I ask them if they've reviewed the job description, and then I offer them to discuss any additional questions that they may have at that time. Typically, my phone interviews last anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. However, I know that I have an excellent candidate when I can talk to someone for 30 minutes or more about our position and our company. Those are the candidates that I basically am like, well, you're a shoo-in and you can just start on Monday. For our in-person interviews, I want you guys to take away that the space that you utilize for your interview is going to be very important in your process. If you are interviewing in a small secluded space or on the treatment room floor or even in the lobby of your hospital, there's going to be a lot of distractions and there is going to be a lot of intimidating factors in the space that you perform your interviews. So if you have a designated space, I would definitely try to utilize that space as best as you can to make it as comfortable and as quiet as possible for your interviews. The etiquette portion of interviews is basically what you expect out of your candidate to also perform yourself. So from the way that you dress, to your punctuality, to your professionalism, is all going to be important. If you have high expectations for your candidate, you need to exceed your own expectations when interviewing candidates. Your questions can make or break an interview process. Focus on questions that will give you information that you need to make a solid decision whether or not this candidate is going to succeed in your environment or not. So at this time, it's hard to assess skill set through questions, but you can ask specific questions regarding critical thinking. How do they hold themselves accountable? Are they open to opportunities to learn from their mistakes? Are they able to lean on their team, and are they a team player, or are they more independent and they just keep their head down and get through the day and go home and unwind? So getting to know the candidate on an intimate level through the types of questions you ask are important, and they will lead you to making the best decision that you need in order to hire the right person for your position. If you don't perform a tour of your hospital after an interview, I would strongly suggest starting this. And this can be tricky, especially if you're in the middle of your day or it's crazy busy or it's on lunch hour and it's slow. The reason behind it is so that they can get a visualization of what type of equipment you use, how the setup looks, and it also gets them prepared for knowing what they might be walking into as far as your hospital. If you own an endoscopy machine or if you have digital x-rays, whether it's DR or CR, these are all things that good technicians are looking for and will be excited to see if you have in your hospital. Performing shadows is also an important part of the hiring process, in my opinion, because it allows you to get another unbiased decision from your team. So allowing a candidate to shadow for even just a couple of hours on the floor, not a working interview, you're not asking them to perform skill set or handle patients, or you're not going to be quizzing them on their knowledge. You're literally just going to see how they interact with your team and allowing them to just perform their job and to get to know a candidate to ensure that they are going to be a good fit for the team. Taking their opinions into consideration when hiring is going to be extremely helpful. However, you have to be careful with candidates that might have worked with certain team members in the past, because then it becomes a bias interview. And if you know that a candidate has worked with another team member in the past, kindly tell them that you're not interested in their opinion. Or if they feel confident that they can give you their opinion based on today's interactions only and not letting the past experiences with this candidate influence their current opinion. After a candidate shadows or gives a tour or concludes the interview process, following up with them within 24 hours is incredibly important. Even if you're not quite ready to make a decision, you want to be able to follow up with them, thank them for their time, answer any questions that they may have that have popped up, and then give them the next steps. Reach a timeline, follow through with that timeline, and tell them that you will be reaching out by X amount of time with final decisions. When I set up an interview, I actually will write an email and post date to send it with information for the candidate to complete a survey after their shadow. This survey is 4 questions long. It basically asks them, how did your shadow go, or how did your interview go? Was it the experience that you were anticipating? And do you feel like we would be a good fit for you? Or do you think that this position is going to be a good fit for you? And then, of course, also offering them to give you any indication of additional questions so that if they do have anything immediate that needs to be discussed, they have that outlet available and ready for them to respond. I request that they respond within 24 hours of receiving that email, and I typically send it a couple of hours post shadow or past interview. So if they were in the hospital until 5 o'clock at night, I will postmark it to either send at 8 a.m. the next morning or something around like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So that way they can not worry about getting the direct information immediately after their shadow or interview. They can process the day a little bit and then complete the form when they receive it in their inbox. Making a final decision oftentimes is either very simple or it can be tricky. So if you are having an issue with making final decisions regarding a candidate, what you should focus on are going to be the attributes that they brought to the interview and during your communications with them. So focusing on if they were very punctual or their presentation during their interview, were they professional, that they expressed specific interest in the position and the company. They weren't just kind of wishy-washy or seemed kind of aloof during their interview or shadow process. making sure that you pay attention to their attitude and behavior, especially during their shadow. They will obviously be on the best behavior in front of a manager or owner of a practice, but they might become a little more relaxed during their shadow when they're around more peers, especially if they have previous relationships with current staff members. So checking out their behavior and language, making sure that they are not talking down about other hospitals or patients or clients, and just kind of assessing if they're going to be a positive environment to continue to have in your hospital, or if they might be a little on the toxic side. It's nice to hear candidates' desire for growth and training, and the ability to kind of roll with the flow and run with the punches and learning to accept and crave constructive feedback is always important, especially when hiring a new person for a role. I have learned that candidates that have less experience and are fresh out of school are moldable. They are quick to learn and to develop their skills. And so new students are always going to be one of my most favorite candidates to hire, because you get to mold them into being the candidate that you want them to be. And also, it's important to focus on whether or not the candidate is going to fit within your company's core values, mission statement, or your niche. You also want to make sure that you're focusing on your team. How is adding this candidate going to affect them? So taking their considerations, their opinions into consideration with their feedback regarding the shadow, ability to train. So if you do have that new hire, but you literally do not have the time, energy, or staff to train them, maybe now's not the best time to hire them for that technician role. But if you still think that they would be a good addition to your team, perhaps consider starting them as an assistant. A big part of hiring at the end of your interview phase is going to be performing references. I personally have learned that it takes me much longer to chase down references by playing phone tag or by not even getting information that is helpful with references, that I have been starting requiring letters of recommendation over references. If a candidate cannot provide me with letters of recommendation, I will accept their references. However, I will just be contacting them to verify simple things such as punctuality and teamwork. However, I will not be contacting past employers, and current employers are also kind of off limits, because a lot of the times candidates don't want us contacting current employers before an offer is made. And after an offer is made, it's kind of a moot point to contact their current employer because you've already reached your decision. But I do believe that there is a huge importance to performing a background check on your candidates, so that you can ensure that you are bringing someone into the team that is going to be not a safety risk or a risk to others. If after everything is all said and done and you have reviewed their resume, their application, their interview process, your team is on the fence, you're on the fence, the next best step is going to be considering what we call GWC. Does the candidate get it? Do they get the job? Do they understand the roles and responsibilities and the position that they are hiring for, or that they're applying for? And does the candidate want it? Do they want the position? Do they want the job? Do they want to work at your hospital? Are they excited? Are they willing to go above and beyond for your clients and patients? And do they have the capacity? Are they going to fit within the needs of what you're going to require of them? Whether it's the schedule, the physical capacity, the emotional capacity, and also the intelligent capacity. Are they checking all of your boxes? If you can answer no to any of these you're not going to do anyone any favors by hiring this candidate. If they do not get it, if they do not want it, and if they do not have the capacity, 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, or 3 out of 3, they're not going to be good for you. So don't even worry about if they don't pass the GWC. You can feel good about sending them a thank you for applying, but no thank you letter. In general, with our hiring at AERC, I have learned that about 1 out of 5 candidates will retract their application within 48 hours of completing their shadow. They will contact you basically saying that they have either accepted a position elsewhere or that we're just simply not a good fit for them. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be prepared that even if you interview and shadow and do all the things, you might not be a good fit for some candidates. And that is typically okay and completely normal. Sometimes they'll ghost you and they won't contact you at all and they'll just leave you hanging. And although that is unprofessional, it's still understandable. And also about 1 out of 10 candidates, you'll reach out to them, you'll offer, you'll give them the schedule and the wage that you previously discussed. Regardless of negotiations, they're going to decline. And the reason for this is because they accepted an offer elsewhere that's more in line with their wish list or goals or their culture that they're looking for, or they simply just used this for leverage at their current employer. And there's really nothing that we can do to change their mind. So when you're offering negotiations with candidates, it's important to know that sometimes you can offer them the moon and the stars and everything off of their checklist, and they will still say no. And that's okay. It's frustrating as heck, but it's okay. So the following timeline is something that I hold myself accountable for as hiring candidates. So typically from their application to scheduling a phone interview, I try to stay within 3 days. This is not 3 business days. This is 3 days. I'm typically in the office 4 days a week. I usually have Friday, Saturday, Sundays off. And I don't leave Thursday with anything hanging in the wind. I always make sure that I follow up with all candidates. I also set an away message on my email indicating my office hours and when I'm going to return to the office next so that they are not waiting all weekend not knowing what is going on. From the phone interview to an in-person interview, again, you want to get that scheduled as soon as possible. If it makes sense for you to not bother with a phone interview and just go straight into an in-person interview, you're going to save a lot of time. Scheduling a shadow within 2 days of interview if they're unable to perform the shadow the same day. It oftentimes is better for candidates to shadow at the same time as an interview and just get it all done at the same time instead of having to return another day. And then ideally, your final decision should be within 48 hours of their shadow, unless you have multiple candidates. You want to make sure that you interview and give all candidates the equal opportunity to apply and to perform a shadow before you make any final decisions. So treating candidates the same way every time is going to be important for your success here. Candidates typically really want mentorship and training opportunities within their company. They're open to opportunities for growth, whether it's into a management role or succeeding into a kennel attendant to an assistant role or an assistant role to a tech role or whatnot. They want to be able to grow within your company and learn new skills. Offering a good relationship with management is also important to candidates. And they're specifically seeking open and honest communication with open door policies, and they really don't want to feel like management is hiding anything from them. And of course, a positive teamwork environment. It's crazy how much veterinary medicine has a bad rep for this, but I know we are all trying to beat the stigma and to provide the best positive work environment we can. Because when our team members are happy, our patients are happy, and our clients are happy. And it's just a wonderful circle to keep everybody happy so that we can do our jobs and be successful. Most candidates that discuss what challenges they think they will face coming to work at a new hospital are very simple. It's a different practice, so they know they're going to be practicing different medicine based off of the different needs of the doctors. And also, they want to make sure that they have the proper support and training opportunities to ensure that they're going to succeed in the role and to meet, if not exceed, your expectations. And also learning about expectations of the new team members as far as how doctors prefer some things over others, and also the way that the support front desk team operates and what they require out of the techs and vice versa, what the receptionists expect out of the techs and the techs respect out of the front desk team. So just ensuring that you're open and that you have this information provided and that you are willing to share and check in with candidates after they start, and making sure that they are feeling comfortable and confident in their role will also help with their onboarding. And this concludes our talk for the day. And I know that I am not live right now, but I really appreciate you sticking this out with me. And if you have any questions, I really want you to feel comfortable contacting me. Wow, it's been a while. So if you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, or if you want help with revising your interview questions, or if you have any ideas that you want to implement but you're not sure how to go about doing so, I would be more than happy to chat with you about that. And if you're interested in anything that we talked about today, just give me shoot me an email, give me a call on the clinic line. You can reach me at 651-501-3759, extension 3008, but email is always best for me when getting in contact with people. So again, feel free to reach out, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.